He was probably blind and deaf. Well, tell him I said hi.
Probably like, I don't know.
6 years ago. What's his name?
Michael? He had a very unique last name. Michael Donovan? Yeah, I probably don't remember.
Yeah. A few years ago, my teacher, his wife, and a bunch of other people came to my house. They stayed for a couple of days, and we decided to go around Lakeshore, walk a little bit. And that was when I was slightly different. I was much more welcoming, open, receptive, kind. And in the couple of hours of just walking around Lakeshore, I ran into like maybe 50 students. And then Hussein, my teacher, said, Amir, you should run for, mayor or something. How do you fill out the application? And so my nephew, Arman, they went back to Roseville, sent me a text saying, I filled out the application. For what? So, anyways, just, tell Michael I said hi. Good morning, Matthew. So what do you guys want to talk about today? Anything fun, exciting? Amaya? Nothing? Are you sure? It looks like you want to talk about something. Yeah, neither do I really. Olivia, how about you? Well, it doesn't feel good to be dismissed like that. Not even no, I have nothing to say, just please, go away. I'm just kidding. Hello. Yeah. Anyone? Someone had their hand up. Hello. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't exactly remember if we talked about this, but like just children dying before their parents did.
Yeah. Like you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, because I was kind of thinking back to previous person I knew. All three of their children died before they passed away due to various things. One cancer, one drug overdose, and can't remember the third one.
Okay. Well, we can talk about death, children, parents, loss, grief, abandonment. Okay, and what else? Anything else out there? What is that? Richard, anything? No? Spike? Dagan?
How do you come to the terms?
What?
How do you come to the terms?
I'm really sorry. I should have retired some years ago. Young people are really great. Okay. Anything else that's like lightweight? Yeah.
How do you avoid feeling useless? Like, I only ask because my dad is afraid to retire, and so he's 70 now.
Yeah, don't tell him to retire. He'll die. Yeah. No retire. What does he do?
He does like financial infrastructure. Yeah.
Well, he should retire. I'm just kidding.
But like, it makes him miserable. and I feel like it's killing him anyways. Thing.
Okay, let's talk about death and acceptance. Right? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Sometimes I think it would be nice to come to class a bit more structured, have a lesson plan, you know. Today we're going to talk about Rene Descartes or Thomas Hobbes, Immanuel Kant, as opposed to just, so what do you guys want to talk about? Can we talk about death? Okay. So let's talk about acceptance, and I suppose we can inject that in various branches of life, different stages, because it really is applicable to almost everything under the sun. So I'll give you a scenario. And you should have a broader definition of retirement. Sometimes people retire from relationships. Sometimes people retire from having sex in relationships. Sometimes people retire from having conversations, retire from one job and they enter another one. So it's just basically an ending of something and the birth of another, unknown. Imagine for a moment that let's say for a moment that I was a slightly different person, a bit more optimistic, hopes and dreams and all those things, a bit more positive. And so if you happen to be a bit more positive, perhaps a bit more younger than I am, you would have lots of things you would want yourself to do in the future. Get married, have children, get a few degrees, buy a car, buy a house. And I go home and I realize I have a migraine headache. And it's not going to go away. I do all sorts of things, it won't go away. So I go to my doctor. She puts me in this dungeon. Some x-rays are taken. And I go back to her office and she says, I have some bad news. You have cancer, stage 4. If I've been completely depressed for the past like 5-6 years, if life has nothing to offer me, if all of my dreams and hopes have been destroyed by life, my own psyche, temperament, and all that, death would in fact be a welcoming thing. Cancer 4, that's great. Sure, there'll be some pain, but then I will die and be out of my misery, called life. But that's not my case. I wake up every morning, as Al Pacino would say in the movie Frankie and Johnny, with my hopes and dreams that I take out from under the pillow, and I go about my day hoping that they'll come true. The news is a bit of a shock to me. Cancer, I'm like 25, bro. I'm 60, I'm healthy. I exercise every day, I eat well. There is no reason for me to have this particular disease. All of a sudden I remember Rene Descartes, 17th century French philosopher. It's always good to doubt. Or if you don't like Western philosophers, go to the Chinese philosopher, Chuang Tzu. The doubt is always the sword, the flashlight of anyone who happens to be the student of life. So I say no, the doctor is probably wrong, the x-ray machine is probably wrong, I want a second opinion. So I go to a different doctor, a different machine, and the result is the same. So maybe the third one. It's going to take me some time to kind of accept the fact that I have cancer. The only thing I can do at this stage is accept the fact that I have cancer, not accept what's going to happen to my life. I accept that the doctors are wrong, that the machines are not wrong. But having walked away from Kaiser, I come home, I tell my wife, and she says, well, let's do this, in our traditional way. Apple juice, cranberry juice, and hopefully the cancer will go away. I'm still going to deny the fact that this particular disease is going to kill me. And I'm saying, no, I will beat cancer. It's very much like people getting married. It may be that 70% of the people getting married will divorce, but it's not going to happen to me. It's true that other people's parents die, but not mine. It's true that other parents lose their kids, but not me. So it's never going to happen to me. I'm going to beat cancer. So the first thing you need to know about us human beings, that you make plans for your life and you dream for a better future. And as someone who's young and healthy, you would say, nothing in life is going to impact me. I'm far too powerful, far too strong. And then this thing happens. And you're going to deny it. And your denial is going to come in the form of looking for remedies. It's not going to happen to you. You're going to try to forget it. You're still going to be hopeful that you're not looking for a job, but you're looking for a way to conquer this disease. You deny and deny and deny. And this only happens when you've gone through a very traumatic experience. A boyfriend coming to you saying, I don't want to be with you anymore. You write your essay in a very clumsy way and you get an F. You say, no, that can't be, So the point is, what we're really good at is the first stage of any traumatic event is that you're going to deny that it's going to happen to you, and the impact is going to be negative. There comes a point where you can no longer deny. It's too much. It's right in front of your face. Every time you wake up, it slaps you. Throughout the day, it slaps you. When you go to bed, it slaps you. When you're having a conversation with your friends, and you're having a good time, and all of a sudden you say, I have cancer. And so the next stage is going to be anger. You're going to be profoundly angry because you've denied, but to no avail. You've tried all these remedies to no avail. You've tried to distract yourself to no avail. You try to forget. It doesn't work. Nothing works. And you know what happens when you're angry all the time? No one wants to be around you. You suck as a human being. And you have every right to be angry. You say, why is my brother healthy and I have cancer? He should die, not me. Or maybe my neighbor. But there are these moments of awareness, where you realize that you're not just angry because of cancer. You're not just angry because you're not able to beat this particular disease. You're also profoundly angry because you wasted so much time. And so your anger multiplies tenfold. You know. There was a movie with Michael Douglas some time ago. He was married with kids, very successful. He was also diagnosed with cancer. And so what happens to him is, he says, I only have was that Puff Daddy? I'm sorry. So is there any other question out there that you guys want to talk about? Anything else? The fact that you realize that you don't have much time ahead of you, and somehow you want to inject meaning into time, into what little time you have left, it's not enough for you to come to realize your life has been a waste. You have another 5, 10 years, or 10 months, or 10 weeks, or 10 days left to your life. The question is, what the hell do you want to do with it? You know, realizing something is simply not enough. It just adds a bit of a burden. You just have to carry more stuff on your shoulders, and it's too much. You know, it's... Hello, Terry. How are you doing? You're very kind. Thank you. Good morning. So let's talk about coffee a little bit. There is this guy in Saudi Arabia. He goes on this journey, and he finds himself in certain parts of Africa. And he comes to realize that these Africans, sometimes they put this thing that looks like a tiny little pebble into this pot of water, and then they cover it, and they let it sit for a while. And then the water that was once clear is now black. And then they drink it. And then if they had any illnesses or sickness to them, it would go away. After some time spending in Africa, he comes back home to Saudi Arabia, and he gets sick, really, really sick. He sends one of his people to this part of Africa and says they have some stuff there, fetch them, bring them back. And he puts these beans in this jar of water, let it sit for a couple of weeks, it turns black, he drinks it, and he's healed. But in addition to regaining his health, something extraordinary happens that he comes to understand. He has so much energy as a result of drinking this thing called coffee. And so it is Saudi Arabia, it is a Muslim country. So he goes to the dervishes. And for those of you who may not know what or who the dervishes are, you have people who are in a relationship and they love their companions, and then you have people who are in relationships and they are in love with their companions. When you just love your companion, you also accept the responsibilities that come with it. Mortgage, diapers, trash, dishes. When you're in love, you become blind to everything, and you have found your angel down here in hell. The dervishes are those who simply don't want to believe. They want to, kind of like Jesus Christ, he would say, they want the kingdom of God inside them to come to life, show his face. And Friday happens to be a very special day for Middle Easterners, especially the religious folks, because it's a day where they go to the mosque and they pray, and they have food together, and they talk politics and religion. And if you happen to be profoundly devout, you stay in the mosque and you pray till the morning, and then you go to work. Of course, you'll be exhausted. So this guy said, let me introduce this particular liquid to my friends, then they can pray and dance all night, and in the morning they can go to work and they'll be fresh. That's what coffee does. And someone from Iran visits Saudi Arabia and has a taste of this particular drink and likes it, takes it to Iran, and for the first time on this planet, you have a place called Qahve Khane. Qahve means coffee, Khane means home. So for the first time, you have a place where coffee is made and served. And then around the 14th or so century, someone from the English world visits Iran, gets a taste, says, oh, that's great, takes it to Europe. And then you have, of course, Starbucks and Pete's and Coles. So this particular drink that used to be the occupation of the dervishes, praying and meditating, contemplating about the miseries of life, it now serves, you go to Pete's, you look at someone, you say you're cute. Okay, anything else we should talk about? Wolf?
Can you tell us a story?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell us a story?
Yeah, I can tell you a story. What kind of story do you like? Like a miserable one? Inspiring one?
More lighthearted one.
I don't have any of those. Let me just give you one that touches on all sorts of things. It's one of my favorites. We had to memorize it back home, the entire poem by Rumi, 2nd grade. You had to come to the very front of the classroom, stand, and just in case, you made any mistakes, first the teacher would belt you, and then you had to go stand in a corner one leg up for like an hour, and then you would limp the entire day after that. So there's this guy, and he's about to go to India. And one of the customs that we have in the Middle East, if I was to go, say, to Europe tomorrow, I would call my father, my mom, my siblings and say, so do you guys want anything for me to bring back? That's what we do. And my mom would say, yeah, bring me like this. And my brother would say, bring me that. So this guy looks at his bird. He had a parrot. He says, so, my little friend, what do you want me to bring back for you from India? And the bird says, give me a few minutes, let me think about this. And then tells his owner that when you go to India, go to this place called Dehradun. And this particular place in Dehradun has this tree. And when you look up, on the branches are sitting all these birds. They look like me. Tell them that you have a bird in Oakland. Lives in a tiny, tiny cage. And wants to fly, has wings, but the cage is so small, can't fly really. And the bird has all these wonderful, beautiful songs to sing, but there is no one to listen, to hear. So for the most part, the bird is mute. That's all. And the guy says, well, that's a very strange request, but fine, I'll do it. So goes to India. Before coming back, goes to Dehradun, goes to this place, looks up, all these birds are sitting. And the birds look at him and say to him, this is a sacred ground, you have no business here. What are you doing here? And he says, well, I have a bird that looks like you guys up there, and he wanted me to relay a message to you that he lives in Oakland in a tiny little cage. He won't fly, he has wings, they're beautiful, but he can't fly because the cage is far too small. And he has all these songs to sing, but he is usually mute because there is no one there to listen to him, to hear him. And when he's finished telling the story, one of the birds from the top branches just falls and dies. The guy says, man, it's awful. Comes back to Oakland, and the moment the door is opened, hello, Kendra. The moment the door is opened, the bird asks, so did you go? Did you tell them what happened? And He's not sure if he should actually tell his story. But eventually, the bird pushes him and he says, okay. So I went there, I told him the story, and one of the birds fell to the ground and died. Upon hearing the story, his own bird falls to the bottom of the cage and dies. So he is very saddened, opens the cage, grabs the bird, puts it on the floor, opens the window so he could throw the bird out and then bury it. The moment the bird leaves his hand, sees the open window, flies away. It doesn't sound like a very fun story, is it? Not even interesting. Well, let me try to unpack it. To unpack the story, let me tell you a little bit about the Gospel of Judas. Is that okay? Is that okay, you guys? It was a book that was found in the year 2000. No one believed or even thought such a book exists, but it did. The book ultimately was sent to a certain state. It went through this huge machine to figure out when this book was written. And this machine spit out this date, 180 years after the death of Jesus. So you have the Gospel of Mark, which is about 40 to 50 years after Jesus. You have the Gospel of Matthew, which is about 60 years. You have the Gospel of Luke, 70 to 90 years. And you have the Gospel of John, 90 to 120 years. And then these other Gospels, Gospel of Philip, Nicodemus, Mary, infancy. So the Gospel of Judas is approximately a short time after the Gospel of John, and no one knows really who wrote these books. One of the nice things you'll find in the Gospel of Judas, and I think it's a progression of a teacher's evolution. So what you have in the Gospel of Mark is that he finds people who are inspired, who are excited, who listen to him, and they pay him a good amount of attention. So Jesus says, okay, you guys follow me. I like you guys. And I like you because it seems like you understand what I'm talking about. And that's the first mistake that every teacher makes. Just because someone has an interesting body language or someone is lazy at you, the assumption is they're listening, they're hearing, they're understanding. So what you have in the Gospel of Mark is his parents think he's gone mad. His disciples keep denying him. They misunderstand him. Even when he calms the storms, calms the waters, they still lack faith. And on many occasions, he looks at them and says, I've done all these things for you guys. And you guys still don't believe me. You have no faith. What's wrong with you? So that's the first thing that teachers do. They look for people who are inspired. And the teacher says to them, follow me. Hopefully you can be a good student. You have the potential at least. Then the next is the Gospel of Matthew. And what usually all teachers do is they have a certain language, they have a certain custom, a certain culture, and they go to the people who understand that language, who understand that culture, that custom. So he speaks to the Jews. The Gospel of Matthew is a Jewish gospel. And that's what we do. Initially what you have in Malcolm X, he only speaks to black people. Right? He only speaks to his own people because he thinks that poverty, oppression, abandonment, all the social issues, it binds them, connects them. But he comes to realize that his own people don't get him. Hey, hello, how are you? It's good to see you. Then, when the teacher evolves a little bit, matures a little bit, understands a little bit, he says, you know what, since my disciples suck, since my own people suck, maybe I should just open my door to anyone who's interested. And that's the Gospel of Luke. Okay? That you're willing to give your teachings to anyone who's willing to give you an ear. But even in that book, you realize it's a waste of time. In the Gospel of John, you find something profoundly amazing. He doesn't tell stories anymore. In the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, he tells story after story after story. What's the meaning of life? Let me tell you a story. How do I come to accept life? Tells the story. Now in the Gospel of John. And there is something really interesting. It's like you have a son or a daughter or a child, and they just don't listen. They keep wasting time. And in the past, like 10 years of sitting your son down and talking to him, you keep telling him story after story after story. Well, let me tell you a story about my own life. There comes a point where you lose patience. You know, you realize that your son, if he continues this, he's just going to go down, and there is no way to rescue him. In the Gospel of John, what you have is a Jesus, a man who no longer tells stories. It's not worth it. Because what exactly is it that language does? Language creates division. I say something, you take my words, the narrative, into your own psyche, you inject a good amount of your own past, then you change the narrative in a way that fits you. Okay? And so what he does, he says the only way you can really inspire people, hopefully make some drastic changes in who and what they are, is magic tricks. Let me multiply bread, fish, raise the dead. Okay? And just in case they have some existential questions, I'm not going to tell them go to the synagogue. I'm not going to tell them read the Bible. I'm not going to take them read a book or go to a workshop. I'm going to invite them to me. So what you have in this particular gospel, Gospel of John, Jesus refers to himself at least 50 times. In the Gospel of Matthew, twice, I am. In the Gospel of Luke, twice, I am. In the Gospel of Matthew, 5 times. In the Gospel of John, 50 times. Why? He's like Costco. There is something about the way he sees himself. He's filled with confidence. He knows who he is. He knows what he has. He's not going to invite people to go towards things out there that are strange. Himself. Okay? But when you read the book, you find it interesting in the sense that he says the only way you can find me is first you have to lose me, then you have to understand what you have lost, and then you have to knock on my door. But when you knock on my door, I need to see you being in tears. You need to cry. In the Gospel of Judas, you find something profoundly interesting. He just doesn't want to live anymore. I've done the talking. He hasn't done anything. I've had close disciples. They don't understand anything. I've talked to my own people. They're stupid. I've talked to people who are not my own. They too are stupid. I've raised the dead, multiplied bread and fish. They still don't believe me. And if this is my purpose, to enlighten people, but no one seems to be willing to receive or have the capacity to receive, my life is useless. I don't want sex. I don't want money. So he says, I'd rather die. And in my death, like V for Vendetta near the end of the movie, I want to go to my Maker. I want to go to God. So that's the story that I think, at least that's my perspective about this particular man some 2,000 years ago, if he actually existed. The bird story is very much the same. For those of us who had children, we'll tell you. When they're born, they are full of life. Then something about you as a parent happens, which is you look at life and you realize how miserable and how frightening life really is. So you put your kids in various programs. You don't give them much leisure time. You bombard them with math, with English, with reading, with this, with that, because you're truly frightened for the future. And so you want them to be successful. So you push them, and you push them, and you push them. And the moment a kid wants to express any amount of creativity, you shut them down. And you shut them down for good reasons. You know, they want to sing, they want to fly, they want to explore and experiment, but it's too dangerous. گلی که خون به دادم پیچ و دابش ز آب دیدگونم دادم آبش به درگاه الهی کی روابی گل از ما دیگری گیر گلابش. That you raise your kid with the blood of your heart and the tears of your eyes. That's how you raise them. She'll tell you. And in the end, you send them to school. And they come back with awful language. So really, I spent all of this time raising this kid. They can't even say hello the nice way, the right way. The hell is that? So, what you have in the story is human beings have no choice but to ultimately find themselves in a cage. The cage of their past, the cage of trauma, the cage of a classroom, the cage of life, the cage of responsibilities, the do's and don'ts, the cage that every relationship creates out there. The cage that you want to fly, but fear holds you down. And rightly so. Life is frightening, you know. And so, once in a while you raise your hand and you say, something happened to me 20 years ago. Is there a way out of this? What you're basically saying is there a way out of this cage? I wake up with the experience that took place 20 years ago. My day is filled with this experience shoving its face into my life. I go to sleep with this experience 20 years ago. Is there a way out? And I think everyone screams and shouts for some freedom. You know, can this class not be as boring, please? Do I really need to take that particular requirement to graduate? Do I need to hang out with these friends? Do I need to go to work? That's the cage. And little by little you realize your belly laughter is basically reduced to a stupid grin on your face. And when someone asks a question, you just nod. You don't even open your mouth to say anything. There is nothing to say. You know, Edvard Munch, the Norwegian painter, who had this wonderful, and his paintings are almost the same, all of them, the Scream. His only mistake on the painting, or in the painting, is that the guy didn't mature enough to stop screaming. He should have realized nobody cares. He should have kept his mouth shut and remained mute. You know? But there is a way out, according to both Judas, Rumi, Socrates, Malcolm X, is that, "Oi, hello, how are you?" Now I have to watch my language. There is a way out, but that way out would be too dangerous for you right now. I can exercise that particular path, but you can't. You're young. You need to make sure you're stable physically. And that stability, physical stability, will give you relative emotional stability, relative intellectual stability. You don't want to worry about rent all the time. You don't want to worry about food all the time. You don't want to worry about love all the time. You want your relationships to be stable. And so you need to spend the first 5, 10, 15, 20 years of your life just belonging to the rat race. Get a job, cheat, lie, do whatever you can. Have a good amount of savings. But then you get to be my age. Your job is secure. You've done most of the things you wanted to do. And now you say, I don't want to prepare for my classes. I want to go to class and just wing it. And just in case no one has any questions, just in case I'm not inspired to talk about anything, I'll just walk home. I don't have to sit in this cage. And if I do, I'll make the conversation exciting just for me. Even if no one desires to listen, that's okay. You have to come to a place where most of the things you care about now, you don't care later on. You don't need to care about money at the age of 40 or 50. You don't need to care about job security. You don't need to care about healthcare because you have them. And when you have those things, your cage grows bigger. It doesn't mean you can fly everywhere, but you can fly once in a while. It doesn't mean that you need to be mute all the time, but you can talk once in a while. That's enough. So with every non-caring thing that enters into you, you're basically retired. You're retired from thinking about job security. You're retired about love. You're retired about this. You're retired about that. And it's a good place to be. You no longer have any need for those things. We had a friend, his name was Rostam. He had this bushy beard, you know, but he had it only because his wife was back home. Because the moment his wife arrived, he shaved. The power of women. He had one son in India, he had another son in UK, and I would often, and we used to play music, and I would say, so Rostam, how are the kids? Where are they? I haven't spoken to them for a long, long time. You're a dad, don't you want to talk to them? No, they're living their life. And it's a great place to be. Because you come to realize, well, every kid eventually has to go through what you yourself as a father or mother have gone through. You know, and hopefully they'll just learn from their experiences. Don't worry too much about that. But, having said all of that, you guys appreciate the cage you're in. Respect it. Because if you don't, it'll demolish you. You need this class. You may not like it. Who cares? It's a cage for 16 weeks. But if you graduate, if you get an A in this class, or a B or a C, you'll find yourself in a bigger cage. San Francisco, Oxford, Yale. It's a good cage to be in. So, anyone? Terry? Amaya? Matthew?
So you speak often of, these great, people who, are like the serpent, as you say in the lecture, where they introduce you to new ideas and how to live in the world. But how do you differentiate, those people from, the charlatans who are, the cult leaders and inquisitors who are preaching an idea that really just...
You can't. It's like asking, how do you know that if the woman or the man you love is good in marriage and will last for the next 20, 30, 40 years? The truth is you don't know. There are a couple of things. There has to be some kind of attraction between the teacher and the students. Now, I will tell you, I don't know how attraction comes about. All I know is that something about me gets attracted to someone out there who claims to be some sort of a teacher. Okay? Sometimes attraction can come quickly, sometimes it takes time. Okay? The more time it takes, the better it is for you. Because we are creatures, after all, who lack patience, and especially today in so many different branches of life. We want quick fixes to almost everything. Now, so the first thing is the element of attraction, and I don't know how it comes about, but something about you gravitates towards what the other person has. Okay. Now, attraction by itself isn't bad. Now, should you gravitate more and more and more towards this particular person, as we put things on the board, it eventually blossoms, snowballs into this thing called obsession. And obsession it's a funny thing because in romantic relationships, you want the other person for sex after a while. You need your body to be next to theirs. Okay? In a student-teacher relationship, it's very much the same. Except that you want the entire physical space, okay? And you have no idea if you're interested in their body, if you're interested in their mind, if you're interested in their emotions, or if they're interested in their spirit. But all you know is that very much like romantic love, You enjoy the way you begin to feel about yourself, the way you think, the way you shake, the way you get nervous and anxious, the way you come with questions, but all of a sudden questions disappear. Okay, you find yourself in this place of mystery, and we are all fascinated by that. We don't like to watch The Matrix 50 times because it's no longer a mystery. We know how it begins, how it unfolds, and how it ends. So we like new things. Now, if you find a Socrates, the shelf life of your relationship is going to be about 10 years, depending on, again, the intensity of attraction and love. Okay? The more intense, okay, and one of the things about romantic relationships is that after 2 weeks you can touch. Okay? You will have intimacy a few times, and then the sort of organisms that we are, very much like what the Buddha said, eventually everything comes to die. You will gradually lose interest. So when your relationship revolves around the physical intimacy, it's about maybe 2-3 months before you say, this is ridiculous. You can fall in love with someone's emotions in the sense that I am depressed, I talk to you, and I happen to be this vault. And you keep banging on it so that the door can open. You can figure out what's inside. You're there as a mechanic. And because emotions are mystery, and because emotions have deep roots, the shelf life of our relationship is going to be about 2 years before I completely exhaust you and you walk away. Or through you, I gain maturity, independence, I no longer need you. Now, you've been addicted to my need for you, but now that there is no need for that, you kind of feel abandoned. So that fizzles out. You can fall in love with someone's intellect. Noam Chomsky, for example. He can sit and talk to you about logic, about this, about that. And that's fascinating. But there comes a point where you say, I listen, I hear, it sounds good, but I want to feel and I can't. So remember, you've graduated from the physical to emotional to intellectual. And Noam Chomsky can kind of keep you dangling on for about maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years until you realize you don't really much care about all this logical syllogisms and all that. You're hungry for something else. That's a different stage of life. If you have graduated from all these different branches of life in a healthy way, there's a good chance that you're not going to be deceived. If, on the other hand, you've been broken and you've never been able to resolve your past, you've never really been able to understand your own intentions, your questions, there's a good chance you'll be deceived and taken advantage of. Okay? Now, all those things aside, though, you will never know if the person you're working with is counterfeit or real. Time needs to pass. And once you are out of love to some extent, and a lot of things will happen. And then there are parts of you that just opens up and you're able to see things. And when you begin to see things, you begin to doubt. And the doubt will eventually seep in. It'll contaminate the emotion we call love, infatuation, respect, honor, and all that stuff. And then you begin to ask some very, very serious questions, very much like Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad. Okay? And you do it in a way to protect your own self, your own psyche, your own life. That's the only way you can know. With the passage of time. But there is no how to any of this stuff. You can run into a David Koresh, or you can run into a Socrates. But here's the thing you need to know about Socrates. I'm not really quite sure if Plato's parents were all that happy about their son running into Socrates. Why? Well, Plato's parents, first of all, they're socially very prosperous. His mother is religious. His father works for the government as well as being a lawyer, you know. And they want their son to follow in their footsteps. They want him to be a lawyer, very successful business person in society. Okay? And what does Socrates do? What benefit is there for man to become a lawyer but lose his own soul? And even though Karl Marx wasn't born way back then, he did say that lawyers are parasites. And Socrates says, why the hell would you, Plato, this young, beautiful kid, only 17, desire to be a lawyer? Do you really enjoy being a parasite? And there is something about Socrates that Plato loved. What? He doesn't know. And there is something about Socrates that Plato loves. I mean, there is something about Plato that Socrates loves. So you need to see yourself in the student, and the student needs to see parts of himself in the teacher. That becomes the element of attraction. Okay. Now, there is an advantage that the teacher has and a disadvantage that the student has. And there is no remedy to this. I'm 60, you're 20. All the things you want to do for the most part, I've done. That's my advantage. So when you tell me you want to drop out of school, I'm going to look at you and say, you're stupid. Now, you're going to find that statement offensive. But my offensive comes with first being an immigrant, being homeless, working at gas stations, graveyard shifts for many, many years, not having anything, and eventually having a few things. In America, a vulturous environment where no one's eventually going to care for you, I'm going to just look at you and just tell it to your face. Don't be stupid. Now, Plato goes home and says to his parents, I don't want to be a lawyer. There's a guy over there, he's really ugly, but there is something about him that I love. And the parents say, well, bring him home, let us look at him, examine him. And Socrates comes home and the parents run away. Why? He's so ugly. Now, you think I'm kidding about parents running away. I'm not. About 40 years ago, after having washed a few cars, I go around 5:30, 6 o'clock to Subway in Roseville. This young person making my Subway sandwich. I was a vegetarian then. She was so ugly. I mean, I can't tell you how ugly she was. I know, Terry, forgive me. And that image, to this day, is stuck. It's like burned into my brain. So as I'm driving home, I can't but just think about the way she looked. And then I go upstairs because I want to eat alone. As I'm putting the sandwich in my mouth, her face comes forth. And I begin to puke. I can't continue eating my sandwich. So there is something to be said about hanging out with attractive people. Kim Kardashian, Snoop Dogg. Well, maybe. Okay? Socrates gives Plato a future that's unknown. Plato, for some strange reason, enjoys that. His parents hate that. I don't know if what would have happened to Plato if he wasn't infatuated or in love or was not a good writer. He'd probably be some loser, like a hippie, sitting somewhere smoking his life away. But thankfully, Socrates, at least for Plato, he found him to be genuine, real, and inspired Plato. So going back to your question, how do you know that you're not being duped? You don't. Do you smoke? How do you know that the person you're buying things from is giving you the proper stuff? You don't know, do you? And that's the point. You take it home, you shove it up your behind, and then you'll experience it. If it's real, you'll be really high. Yeah. Yeah, doesn't. You can't really. Initially, you're frustrated because you want to solve a very, at least for me, a very elementary mathematical equation. But as a 5-year-old who just stepped into the world of math, is going to be quite frustrating for you. First, you have to figure out, what the hell is this number? Who made this in any way? You know, why is it that 2 plus 2 equals 4 and not 5 or 6? Who came up with 2? What's the plus sign for? Okay. So, and your parents try to jam all the stuff in your tiny little brain. What you really want to do is play Nintendo, Donkey Kong, or Pac-Man, if those games still exist. You know, you, on the other hand, you want to go out there and play, but your parents say no. You know, sit and do this, and it's frustrating because you're living in a cage now, as we talked about earlier. You know, you want out, but they want you to be focused. And then there comes a point where 2 plus 2 is no longer an issue for you. You know, that world is finished for you. You know the ins and outs of basic math, okay? Now you enter into, say, a history class. You got to figure out what 3 branches of government exist. What are they? Who are the 9 justices? And you're not dealing with math now. You have to memorize all these, like, people you don't really care for. And then there's going to be a quiz, okay? And then after a few tries and memorizations, that'll be over. And then you have to sit back and say, okay, what am I going to do about the future? I'm only 18, I finished high school, now what? So what happens is you try something, you realize it's not easy to solve, and that not easy to solve creates a set of frustrations, anxieties. With a good amount of practice, if you don't give up, it's very much like depression. You know, if you don't give up, what happens is you become proficient, and in patience, little by little, you grab tools from here and there, and then you can apply. And you will overcome frustrations and anxieties and angers and all those things. But then you move into a different area of life. Let's say in a few years, you have to get into a relationship, you want to get married. That has its own frustrations. You look at the stats. You look at some of the behaviors that your companion exhibits. You look at your own shortcomings. You know, he's over there, you're over here. You know, he may be a different race. Your parents may not like him. You may have some issues, and those all create elements of frustration. So, and then, you know, you get to be my age, for example. You want to do certain things, your age, your energy, they just won't allow. So you have frustration at every different stage in life, okay? There is no antidote to it. If you have learned how to be patient in doing math when you were 5 and doing history when you were 6, what they all have in common, the common thread is be patient. Practice, you'll eventually get it. And if you can kind of keep that common denominator, be aware of it, it's not that you can overcome all frustrations out there. It's just that you'll just know better how to deal with them. And remember, you're new to life. And you're going to be new to many areas of life. And every time you walk into any new situation, you don't have the proper tools. You don't have the knowledge or the experience or the expertise. You're going to fall and you're going to fail. So it's a natural thing, you know. The other aspect of it, this is an individual how-to culture. That you don't listen to your parents, you don't have any elders, you don't really care for your grandparents' ideas about this and that. You want to do everything on your own. And that's a very dangerous path to take. It's exciting. It's just dangerous because as an 18-year-old, you're way, way, way too new to go out there and wrestle with life that has been around for a few million years. And an immensely complex social structure. Not to mention your own psyche. You know, Indians and Asians are interesting groups of people in the sense that they come from what they call honor cultures, that they respect their elders, and they're community oriented. So when the father says, you need to do piano, okay. Even if you don't like it, you do it. And then whatever money you make, you put in the family pot. Okay. If you're not community oriented, what you do then is you just journey life on your own until you realize you don't have any power to match life's. And then you seek help if you haven't lost that ability. Any one else before we go home? Megan, don't cry. I'm just kidding. Amaya. Terry. Matt, well, hold on. Anyone else? Yeah. It's okay. I got here about 4:15, waited for 10 minutes for the tower to let me in. I sat on the road for about 3 hours. Then I went for a walk. As I was walking, it reminded me of Abraham Maslow. He was walking, and then he fell to the ground and died. It was a good day up to that point. Then I made sure that I go back to the office, grab my phone just in case I fall, someone can pick up my phone and call my nurse. Anyone else? She's very cute. Amaya, yes. Being received? Perceived or received? Perceived. Like with a P, like bathroom. Okay. When you're born, I know you're saying, I don't want to go all the way back to my birth, but there is a reason why we are the way we are, I think. You want your parents to appreciate you. You want them to respect you. So when they say, do the dishes, you say yes, not because you want to do the dishes, but you want your mom to look at you with pride. But my son is finally doing the dishes. And when they come home and they say, Dad, look at the picture I drew for you. It's just a stick. We say, oh, that's great, son. You're like a Picasso, right? And when he runs really, really fast, you say, oh, Bolton, right there, Flash. And then when you go to school, you make friends. You want people to like you. Sometimes you sacrifice your own self so that your own desires, your own temptations to do certain things, to be it slightly different so that other people can like you, so you can continue to be friends. And that goes on for a long, long time. You need me to like you, Amaya. You need me to like you. Because I have to give you a grade. If you do anything that will inspire my dislike of you, I will read your essays very, very, very closely. And I won't just have one red pen in my hand, I'll have 5. So you and I have no choice but to please other people for a long, long time because we need them to survive life. You can't just go around and be a bully to everyone. You have no power just yet. Now, if you want to be perceived the way you want to be perceived, that depends on how you perceive yourself. Do you perceive yourself as just a woman with attractive parts that men covet? Well, that makes you profoundly disposable after 2, 3, 4, 5 days. Okay? Do you want to exhaust men by talking, or your companions, by talking about your past, your race, your mom, your dad, this and that? Okay? And remember, what you talk about is how you see yourself. Okay? If, for example, you begin to talk about Malcolm X and you read his book 50 times, there is something about you that finds that particular literature interesting. You see your own reflection in the pages. And you want people to perceive you in a very, very different way than someone who just look at my body. Okay? There comes a point, and remember, as you mature and grow, the circle of people that you want to pay attention to you shrinks. I ran into Jacob Needleman. He used to teach philosophy at San Francisco, and he used to head the Fourth Way School. It's some philosophy of life in Canada, Australia, very variety of different places. I remember I had gone to his house a number of times. His wife used to play piano for me and for other people, and I went to a couple of his workshops. I ran into him Lakeshore on Saturday. I said, "Hey, Jacob, how are you doing?" And very much like Olivia, he went like this. And I realized he had come to an age or a stage in life where he just really just wanted to be left alone. He enjoys his own company, which was very, very quiet. Once in a while, he goes out there, gives lectures. Most often, he sits and reads a book, or does audios for various publishers. There comes a point where you no longer need a lot of people to pay attention. In fact, you don't really care for them. I don't know if I've shared this with you, Amaya, but just between you and I, usually when someone knocks on my office, first of all, my office's door used to be open all the time. Now, I kneel on the floor. I look under the crack of the door to see if I can recognize the shoes. If I don't recognize it, I won't open it. I don't want anyone to look at me. And I don't want to look at anyone. And by the way, that doesn't mean that should any of you want to come to the office, you're not welcome. You're more than welcome to just send me an email and then come to the office. Since where you are at this stage in your life, you have no choice but to be interested in other people. You should have the insight and the maturity of having mature people look at you to make you both feel inspired as well as feel pathetic. It's a good combination. Sometimes when I run into Angela Davis, and I become aware of her history, I have lots of things to say. You can tell, right? I like to talk, but when she's around, I don't like to be seen. I'd rather be invisible. She's the sun, I'm the moon. It's just best for her to be perceived, not me. Yeah. Find good people and then force them to pay you attention. Grab them by the throat. Anyone else? Terry.
You had a chance to play to
If you would have asked me that question about 30 years ago, 35, 40 years ago, it would have been a good question. I have no desire to meet them. Once you realize how books are written, in other words, you sit somewhere, it's a quiet place, maybe you have some piano in the background, maybe you turn off the lights, but you sit quietly for about 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. And then if you happen to somewhat be intuitive, creative, reflective, then you begin to inspire some emotions, and then you put those emotions into thoughts, reflections, and ultimately writing. That's how books come about. And so when someone says, I have this great book that you should read, I say, no, I know how ideas come about. I know how inspiration comes about. I know what happens to creativity. I don't want to read anything. So what I do know is that Socrates was inspired, so was Plato. I too was inspired some 40, 50 years ago by a man. Inspiration and creativity create a good amount of loneliness and isolation. And sometimes they leave a mark inside you where you want inspiration to come, but it's not coming because it's not up to you. That makes you sad, even depressed. And that makes you angry. You say to yourself, did I really waste my time? I wrote this great poem yesterday, but today it's not coming out. Am I just not a poet? And though you go through that yo-yo syndrome, up and down, good and bad, good days, bad days, many bad days, a few good days. Go ahead.
As Socrates and Plato, or teachers as well, you see yourself in the same class.
Oh no, I am way, way above them. Oh, Terry, what can I say to that question? It's like someone, looking at a pastor over there. So, are you better than Jesus? Yeah, of course I am. He didn't rap the sermons. I do. But I will say that if Jesus was to come back, I'm not quite sure if he would have the language to speak to the people today. Because we are different animals. We look at things differently. We express things differently. Our desires are different. We are far more complicated than people were some 2,000 years ago. We have too much trash inside us. When you look at the Gospels, the philosophy that you find in it, it's just so narrow. You're also talking about a culture that believed in things as sacred. That's not us. I think someone like Joel Osteen would do much better than Jesus Christ. Jesus doesn't really care about the psychology of his customers. He kind of just tells you you're stupid. Joel Osteen, on the other hand, he's like a market researcher. Does this place need a magazine shop or a bookstore? Well, you see people high and drunk and prostitutes everywhere. It's a magazine shop. I wouldn't know how Socrates would fare today. If I could add this last part too, and then we'll go home. Is it time to go home?
At 16.
The more valuable a thing is, the less customers it's going to have. Customers with resources to buy. You can be interested in a rug, but do you have the money to buy it? I'm Persian. Persian rugs are like Persian cats, they're beautiful. Sometimes I get these emails, that this particular village in Iran gave birth to this particular rug, and it's gorgeous. The first thing I do is look at the price tag. I love the rug. I just don't have the money to buy it. You can love Socrates, but you may not have the capacity to buy it, or hear him, to listen to him, to apply his ideas. But even having the capacity to like someone like Socrates, that's a gift. Well, thank you for taking my time once again. Thank you. It's good to see all of you. Take care. Yeah. Have a nice... Yes, I'll see you Thursday, right? Thursday? Okay.
Have a good day, Professor.